my horse over there with no name. I've been through the desert on a horse with no name, and I've been to the desert, and boy, I can tell you, it's hot. We're talking like 105 to 110 every day, not a cloud in the sky. You try traipsing around out there in that heat with no shade, it is not good. The Arizona sun is definitely hot. Just got back from out there. I was out there on a separate airplane project, which is kind of what I do for a living, airplane stuff. But I was out there and had a little airplane problem. I want to give a quick shout out and a plug to some people I ran into on the field at Glendale, Arizona, GEU. In the maintenance shop, they've got both an FBO and a maintenance facility there. So it's Glendale Aero Services is the FBO, and they're connected up with Glendale Aero Maintenance. Same company, same people. Steve Fisher, John Fisher, the guy that runs the maintenance side of the thing, super sharp guy. And I can tell you, I know little about airplanes. I'm not an A&P mechanic, but I've been around airplanes and working on stuff. These guys hooked me up and helped me out. Not in trade for anything else. I paid my bill and all that is good. But I'm going to give them a good shout out and a plug because they did a top-notch, excellent job. They're thorough, clean, paperwork's good. It's just the way I like it. Everything was very nice, and I appreciated that they took time to fit my crisis into the middle of their stuff. Did a nice job. If you need anything on your airplanes, they do a lot of Cirrus, Baron, piston stuff. They also can do turboprops, jets. They got a full avionics shop, big hangar, lots of A&Ps out there. Every single A&P that I worked with out there on the floor in my little airplane project that I had to get done, super knowledgeable, and I appreciate Glendale Aero Services. Now, I was out there on that airplane project, but while I was there, I went and visited November 13 Alpha Romeo. And you'll see in the progression of this video, I kind of morph and evolve what I'm thinking. When I first looked at this accident, this is a V-35 fatal that killed two guys June 18 of 2022. When I first looked at it, I'm thinking base to final, stall spin, case closed, not really much to talk about. The more I got into it, the more I looked at it, I was very curious since I was going to be out there anyway to take a look at this. Everybody on the field that I talked to had an opinion on this. Everybody else had done the same thing I did. Looked at the ADS-B data, looked at everything, and said the same thing, probably base to final, stall spin. I initially, when I made my very first clip, I was still along those lines. You'll see how this video progresses and how my thinking changes. The eye-opener was making it to the crash site. Once I saw the crash site and the markings on the desert floor, this is over. Now, keep in mind, this accident is very much like 8-5 Charlie Tango, which opens up an entire new concept for us here in flight training. I am very much of the opinion that social media, YouTube, is an excellent, free, educational way to get the message out there so you can prevent dying in your own airplane. We always talk about an engine failure after takeoff. It's real easy. You make a takeoff, the engine goes quiet. Well, that's an engine failure. No discussion and no debate. If the engine stops and your propeller stops, that's an engine failure. What about an engine that doesn't stop but rolls back? It's producing not no thrust, it's producing less thrust. What do we do about that? Do we ever talk about it? Do we ever train for it? The answer is no. Tell you the truth, I haven't thought very much about that myself. Broomfield, Colorado, 8-5 Charlie Tango, that's the Cherokee 6 that killed two guys. Those guys had the exact same thing. They took off for runway 16. They did not have an engine that failed. They had one that rolled back and was not producing proper power. They could have taken it straight ahead and landed straight ahead and been alive today. At the very last second, they elected to make a hard left-hand turn and go for a road, a paved road, probably to try to save the airplane. They had tons of ample space. Look on this screen right here that I'm showing you. This is the space. This is where they took off. This is their little left-hand hook turn at the very end. It's that turn at the very end. The impossible turn is impossible, and we call it the impossible turn for a reason. It's impossible. Don't do it. An engine that is not producing full power is the same thing as an engine that's failed. Treat it the same way. Practice for it. Be ready. If you need to close your own throttle and go straight ahead, even though your engine is still running, then do that. The one in Buckeye, Arizona is pretty much the same thing. So I'm going to show you that clip, but don't beat me up too bad for my philosophy changing as I go here. The further I got going on this and the further I realized, the very last step was that I realized finally that E35 had the electric prop with the momentary switch on it. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but it was their touch and go in low RPM that got them on this. That engine was running perfect. plenty of manifold pressure, oil temperature would have been indicating perfect, but they did not have RPM because of that prop control that neither guy knew how to operate. The E35 is not really a very good touch-and-go airplane. Let's take a look at these clips back to back. They're kind of long, but this is my story for Buckeye, Arizona, November 13 Alpha Romeo. I hate to stand next to a hangar that's got a wreath because you know something bad happened here. This is the hangar of Daniel Keene. Accident was June 18, 2022, just a few miles west of here, Buckeye, Arizona. So I'm in Glendale. This was Daniel Keene's hangar. Here's the inside story. Daniel was a flight student himself, part owner, somehow business related with a flight school. So he's getting his flight training. He's also a part owner in an Archer. I think he had somewhere around 30 hours of flight time total when this tragic accident happened. I'm gonna tell you what I think happened here. Once again, it's probable cause. Here's what I probably think happened, but there's a couple big takeaways off of this. Don't do this. Both of these guys died a terrible death in this airplane. I got the correspondence from the guy who Daniel wanted to fly with him. The airplane was a Bonanza, an E35, an older Bonanza. Daniel was a student pilot. This airplane had not flown in a long, long time. Like basically over the last 3 years, this thing has not budged. Somehow, I think it did have an annual. I think it was actually legally in annual from the records I can tell so far, but that's just a guess. Bottom line is, it hadn't flown much. I don't think it flew at all since its last annual. Daniel had no business in an E35. The guy that he found to fly with him was Emmanuel. Emmanuel is a CFI, also working for this flight school and several others. Emmanuel probably had zero previous Bonanza experience, and what they did, he found Emmanuel that would go fly with him, and blind leading the blind. I'm not absolutely positive about the yoke situation. I know it was an individual yoke initially. I think it was eventually converted to a dual yoke, but I don't know that for sure. In any case, off of 17, they went out and flew this airplane. Emmanuel's in the right seat, Daniel's in the left seat. They go out and fly for a little bit. They end up over at Buckeye. We're going there next to see the crash site. They end up at Buckeye. They do a touch and go. On the touch and go off of 17, power comes in, nose comes up, and they start a right-hand turn. The crash site is kind of on the downwind leg, a beam, the touchdown point, not very far off the extended center line of 1735. Just off to the right there. But stall spin, this is a DMMS. You guys out there, pay attention. Your minimum maneuvering speed after takeoff, get DMMS before you ever think about a turn. Fly your minimum maneuvering speed. Save 30% above clean stall. Don't even think about loading those wings and turning until you've got DMMS, and then keep on going. Stall spin, low altitude, you're dead. There's no fixing this, and there's no stall spin recovery from that altitude that's going to work. Ain't going to happen. Very sorry to hear about this one. Deepest respects and condolences to the families of both Daniel and Emmanuel. Tragic loss for the community. Met a lot of nice people out here that knew both of them, and they were very nice people, and both of them well respected with families and all of that. It's horrible. Don't do this. Let's go out to the crash site next. I'm going to show you the spot where Daniel and Emmanuel ended up. Made it to the crash site, Buckeye, Arizona. So we just left the hangar, came out here, took a little bit to find this out here, but this is super interesting. You know, the things I read prior to being here is far different than the opinion that I got now after being here just a few minutes. NTSB report indicating some headings and path of the airplane and things like that. I'm going to offer a dissenting opinion on this and tell you what I think. But before I do, let me show you what I'm seeing here. Out just a little bit northwest of the airport here. And here's the ground spot right here where the cockpit and fuselage ended up burning with the tail in the air. This is the picture that you saw from the news. This is the V-tail sticking up in the air right here. But prior to this, along this line right here that I'm going to show you as I walk backwards here, this is the actual path. So this was not a stall spin vertical impact. The only difference is the airplane did end up in a vertical position with the tail straight in the air. The V-tail was definitely visible from the highway here, sticking straight up in the air, which might lead you to believe that it was the stall spin and a vertical impact. Here's the crater right here where the engine hit, right here. And you can still see all kinds of airplane pieces, and even, let's look down here in the dirt right here. Here's plexiglass from the windshield right here, still in this spot. This is definitely where the nose of the airplane hit, but let's go this way and take a look at this path right here. This is the path, and it's a long ways from here, from the start of this all the way to the burn spot. So here's the first point of impact right here. Still lots of broken glass and debris right here, but take a look how far it is from here to the final resting point there. The heading that this path was on was not 287 as the NTSB said. The path that this airplane was on was 010. It's on a north, slightly northeast path. It hit left wing down and it cartwheeled. So here's what happened. I think probably they did a touch and go on 17. After the touch and go, for whatever reason, they encountered some form of reduced thrust. They were unable to get full power out of the airplane, so the emphasis became getting it back around and making a landing on 17. They made an immediate right-hand turn after their touch and go to try to enter the downwind for 17. They only made it up to about 100 AGL. I get this from ADSB data, which isn't super accurate, but they didn't make it to 1,000 feet. They might have made it to 110 or 120, but it wasn't very high. They flew the downwind pretty close and pretty tight. When they got here, directly abeam of me is the approach of 17, where they're starting to turn. Now they're low, out of energy and out of thrust. They're pulling back on the yoke. They stalled it low to the ground, and a wingtip hit right out here first. This is definitely a wingtip impact first and a cartwheel to end up all along this. So it's not a confined wreckage path as I originally thought. What this is a failure of these two pilots to recognize that they needed to take this thing straight in, wings level. Look at the amount of space out here. It's wide open. You would have killed a couple cactus, and that's about it. Engine problems, wings level, on our DMMS all the way, keep it flying, do a nice flare, and take what you get off field in a Bonanza. Take it in, gear up. You're going to be no problem. You're going to go home for dinner that night, no problem. You try to make it around the impossible turn. It's called the impossible turn for a reason. It's impossible. You cannot turn and bank this airplane low speed with a sick engine and try to make a downwind base and final, and it's going to run out of energy, and that's where this one did right here. Totally different opinion after visiting the site versus reading what I read on the web from the NTSB, which is not good. This is a DMMS failure. Also, as I mentioned before, instructor in the right seat, new pilot in the left seat, low time guy. Can't be sure about the yoke situation, either a dual yoke or a throwover yoke. I certainly hope it was not a throwover yoke, but that's entirely possible as well. Deepest condolences to these family and friends of these two individuals here. This is a bad one. They could have survived this impact, but they burnt. The impact itself was horrible. It would have been very violent. The thing that made it not survivable is the fact that it caught fire. They were trapped inside and they could not get out. It's a bad way to go. I'm telling you, you're gonna have a problem in your airplane. Take it straight ahead. Leave the gear up. If you're in a fixed gear airplane, doesn't matter. Go full flaps, make a full stall into something, wings level, straight ahead, and you'll be alive to call me up and thank me later. That's all it is. These guys definitely were flying on the downwind. They definitely had some kind of a problem, and they were in a hurry to get back to pavement. I don't care about the pavement. Forget the pavement. Put the airplane down. Come on. This is so ridiculous. 18 times per month we're doing this. When are we going to ever learn? Sorry, I get wrapped up in this and uptight over this. It's disgusting. I can't believe it. I got to get out of here for my tiny little itty bitty pleasure YouTube channel in Buckeye, Arizona. DanGryder, probable cause. Day 3 out here in the Arizona heat. I am sun-drenched. This Greek godlike burnt body of mine's been out here in the sun traipsing around. I'm at Glendale right now. I've been over at Buckeye. Boy, do I have an update now that I've been here 3 days. I've talked to everybody on 13 Alpha Romeo. Now I got the whole story. It's a different story than what I originally had when I first got here and first got started on this. Now that I've been to the crash site and talked to the rest of the people, now it's making a whole lot more sense. It is hot out here. This airplane's at Glendale. This is the airplane that Dan started flying in. The story is he bought that Bonanza, the E35. He bought it 3 years ago for about $40,000. Now he needs to learn how to fly. They talked him out of learning to fly in the Bonanza because the Bonanza still had a lot of problems. He didn't pay much for the Bonanza. He decided to get some instruction in this airplane, and he soloed and had about 30 hours in this Archer 3. Came time to make a first flight in that Bonanza. Let's go back over to the flight school. I got a couple things I got to clarify off of that. I apologize, but being out here on site, traipsing around and talking to these people, that's how you figure out what the real deal is on this, and I got it all figured out now. I think I got a really accurate picture of exactly what happened. You're not going to believe this. Let's go back over to Sky Venture. Day 3 out here in Glendale, Arizona. I've been over to Buckeye. Back here at the hangar, this is the spot where I started this video before I had all the rest of the information. This is Dan's hangar where the E35 was based. I originally thought that Dan was part owner in this company based here, which is kind of like a sky club, a flying club kind of a thing. Turns out this part of the hangar, this little end cap, is just simply an office. So this company here, Skyway Flight Aviation Academy, was not owned by Dan. He simply rented them the office that goes here and kept his airplane next door. Truth is, this airplane was bought by Dan 3 years ago. We've already talked about that. He had very little experience. Nobody would fly with Dan in the E35. He couldn't find anybody to go out, and this airplane was, two questions I had, was it an annual? The answer is yes, it was an annual. The airplane was legal. Manny, the flight instructor, had zero previous VTAL experience, never been in a VTAL. Dan had never flown this airplane. This airplane has not flown in 3 years. Manny has never flown a VTAL. Now he jumps in the right seat. Question number 2 that I didn't know the answer to that I do now, it definitely had dual yokes in it. That's a good thing, both yokes. However, the VTAL has, this E35 has what we call an electric prop. It's a propeller. You have to hold this little switch just right to control the propeller pitch, the RPM. These guys were fine on takeoff because it was already at high RPM. They got up in cruise, they stayed in there, but they made it over to Buckeye where the objective was to do a touch and go. Now they do their touch and go. They never got their propeller to full RPM prior to the touch and go, so they cram the throttle to it, which pushes their manifold pressure way up. Their RPM never went full forward because it's not like a traditional airplane where you just push a knob in and it goes up to high RPM. This thing, you have to hold the toggle switch and wait and wait and wait and wait. In the process of doing the touch and go, I don't believe that the RPM ever made it up to 24, 25, 2600. You have to hold that switch a long time. The E35, for this reason, is not a great touch and go airplane. This explains why they had plenty of manifold pressure, but they did not have the RPM to support flight in that heat. They only made it to 100 feet. Manny in the right seat is trying to get this airplane around. It had a $40,000 initial cost. In today's market, the airplane was worth probably closer to 100. Dan did not want to scratch that airplane. He didn't want to land it off field in the desert, had no insurance on it. They have absolutely got to make this thing back to 1.7, and they tried like crazy to get it back to 1.7. Only problem is they didn't do it. They did not accomplish getting this thing back. It stalled, the right wing hit, and it cartwheeled, as we saw from the footage that you've just seen from being out there in the desert. Manny, 700 hour CFI. Nice guy. The bottom line here is, from everybody I've talked to, you couldn't tell Manny anything. Everybody told Manny, don't fly this, don't try to instruct in this airplane. You better figure out all of that stuff, all those systems. You better know what you're doing if you're going to give instruction in this airplane. Manny didn't listen, and Manny was the last guy to figure out this propeller control is not as simple as it looks. That's how they died. Here's your takeaway. If you're watching this channel because you want some information, some education, here's your education. Don't burn alive in your airplane like these guys did. Manny actually got ejected from the airplane, but Dan burnt alive in the airplane. He survived the crash, but burnt. It's a horrible way to die. Don't do this. If you have either an engine failure or a loss of thrust, let's say you have an engine that is not producing proper power, treat it like an engine failure. Wings level, straight ahead, take it into the desert, take it straight into whatever you got, but go wings level, under control, fly that airplane as far into the crash scene as you possibly can, and you'll be alive. These guys attempted to make it back, and that's what killed them. Horrible story. Our deepest condolences and sympathies to these family and friends. I hate to be here and talk about this, but I'm glad I burnt up 3 days out here, burning up out here in the desert, traipsing around. Look at this. I've talked to everybody out here. I've been there. I got this figured out. I am 100% confident on what I have found out here. It's not a good story. Do me a favor, stay alive. I don't have time to travel to your town and make an accident video about how you died in your airplane. I'd rather you take it straight ahead, land straight ahead, step out of your airplane, and let's go eat dinner. That would be a whole lot better. For my time, let me pledge the YouTube channel, DanGryder, probable cause. So there you have it. I'm back, and there's your conclusion. Think about this. An engine failure may not present itself as an engine failure. If it's rolled back and you're not getting thrust, you could have swallowed a valve, you could have a carburetor problem, you can have any kind of a problem. If you're not able to maintain speed and altitude, you are an engine failure. Take it straight ahead and land wings level, stall it into the earth, and you'll be just fine. A full stall onto the ground, and it'll roll out. You'll probably hit something. You're probably going to scratch your airplane. At that point, the insurance company owns it. Who cares? Get a new one. It doesn't really matter. I got 4 or 5 more of these accidents to go visit here in the very near future over the summer and this fall here. I'm going to take Dylan with me. We're going to try to travel. I appreciate your support. Here's my webpage for Airborne Animal Rescue. If you can support $1 or $2 towards our efforts in travel, it is very expensive, and we're not trying to make a profit on it, but your help in covering $1 or $2. I've got 4 methods that you can slide me $1 off of on these apps, and we sure appreciate it. It severely helps cut into the costs, the raw, pure costs of food, hotel, and cars, and rent cars, and things like that to travel. But our intention is to start visiting a whole bunch more of these fresh ones as they occur in real time to get lessons that are every bit as important to you. I hope that you'll listen to what this one was about and think about that. Let me know if I'm on track with this. Engine failure after takeoff is not necessarily an engine failure after takeoff. It rolls back. Have you thought about that? To tell you the truth, I had not thought much about that, but I'm going to think about it different now. And I know for sure my new and improved teaching is going to include that scenario. A loss of thrust, a rollback of thrust after takeoff is going to be in the mix for dealing with that, so that you treat it as a pure hardcore engine failure where the prop actually stopped. Does that make sense? That's the scenario on both 85 Charlie Tango and 13 Alpha Romeo. I got to get out of here. This video's already been long enough, but I appreciate you suffering through it. Some super important learning aspects off this. Our deepest respects and condolences to the 4 men on both of these aircraft, 85 Charlie Tango, 13 Alpha Romeo, that lost their lives not knowing the information that they needed to know at the time that they needed to know it. And that's what hurts me the most, that information. It's only an information thing, and that's all. For my tiny little itty-bitty fledgling YouTube channel, DanGryder, probable cause. You can't remember your name, 'cause there ain't